Funny thing about faith and fear, both require belief in something unseen. You know, politics is a funny thing. I'd liken it to a ravenous wolf that can tear us apart and get us shook to our very core. I laid down my arguments of it many years ago, but I've noticed it's reared its ugly head in as many months, 2 or 3 months of just kind of pondering things, and had to do a little reset this evening. Goats and old trees and dogs will do that for you when you're grounded in faith and realize who's in control of this old spinning blue rock that we live on. I was reminded that no matter what, God hasn't given us the spirit of fear, but a sound mind, hasn't he? And really, when you boil it down, we're wasting precious breath when we talk about things of man sometimes instead of the good gospel of Jesus Christ. So I had to reset myself a little bit today and the last few days. I think we have to bond together as a people. Noticed a couple of friends dropping off my friends list personally. Nothing political that I've said. Learned that lesson, but just kind of hurts your heart when you think about loss of human connection and the inability to reason together about things. Truly, we are more united than we are divided, but we choose to sometimes focus on the division when it shouldn't be that way. I think at the end of the day, Christ, well, he showed us by an example. Reminded of a man that had a dream, was been curious about the difference in heaven and hell, and in his dream the good Lord walked him into a room. There sat people malnourished, starving, poor health, around a table full of pretty good smelling stew. They all had spoons in their hands. The spoons were a little odd. They were longer than their arms, and every time they tried to take a bite of the stew, it just would spill out. They couldn't connect with their mouth to get nutrition. And there they sat in misery. The holy man, the man that was having the dream, thought it a travesty, this going on. The Lord looked at him and said, this is comparable to hell. They went into another room. Another delicious pot of stew sat amongst a group of people. But they had the same type of spoons, longer than their arm. But they, in comparison, were very healthy and laughing and talking amongst themselves and enjoying the stew. The difference was, since they couldn't make it to their own mouth, they were feeding each other with their long spoons. So therein lies the lesson. When we help each other, we help ourselves, don't we? The old adage about a young couple that had moved into a brand new home that they'd saved and dreamed for and was getting settled in. And the wife noticed out her little breakfast nook window that the neighbor was hanging up her laundry on a line. She commented to her husband, said, look how dirty that white laundry is. She must not know how to wash her clothes correctly. Well, the husband shrugged it off, and this went on for a good month. Every morning that the lady across the way was hanging out her laundry, the young bride would complain about the inefficiency of the wash and how dingy it looked. One morning, to her surprise, she looked out and the clothes were crystal clean, sparkling white in the morning sun. She said, look, she's finally learned how to do laundry. The husband shrugged his shoulder and said, well, I cleaned the windows today. Stark contrast. Sometimes we don't understand each other quite like we need to, and those ravenous wolves, those outside forces of people we'll never meet, that although they control our daily lives in a governmental fashion, we have the right to choose. I think these days I'll choose the faith end of it, as I've seen it so oftentimes in my life that that's the right path, the peaceful path. So as we ease into the holidays and encounter those maybe of different political opinions or different beliefs, Why don't we resort to the thing that Christ called us to do and simply love, be Christ-like in his grace and love. Hope that helps somebody like it did me today as I pondered it watching the goats graze. Y'all have a good evening and have a good week. Be the light.